Well, good evening, Colorado and the Rocky Mountain Mile High region. What is up? It is a Friday edition of Denver Sports Tonight, also a special Saturday edition of Orange and Blue Today. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason here to talk about the guy that we miss. We're going to start it out with some Justin Simmons discussion, Mace, because he'll be back for the opponent this week. Just seems so weird seeing him in a Falcons uniform.
Yes, it does. And you start thinking about where Justin Simmons is going to kind of measure up and fall in when it comes to Broncos history as this team sits today in position for a playoff spot. And it's entirely possible that Justin Simmons might literally play the 8 years between playoff appearances without going to the postseason. And unfortunately, that's going to kind of hurt how he's regarded for things like Ring of Fame and such in the future. But man, for some lousy Broncos teams over the years, he was a pretty strong beacon of hope. And I think that's not a bad that's not a bad thing to have in terms of what your legacy is with a team that plays in a place that, as Falcons teammates pointed out, as Broncos pointed out, it's still his hometown. He still has his home here in Colorado, but he's playing for the Falcons.
Not too far from Vance Joseph, according to what VJ told us on Thursday. And with Justin, it's his work in the community. It's just the effort that he brought forth on lousy teams mostly. He never cut corners. He never looked for an easy way out. He never had that lingering injury where you had to wonder, like, is he really banged up or is he just kind of taking some time off? Like, Justin Simmons gave his all to the Denver Broncos, Mason. That's why I think personally they should give him a video tribute. If they don't, put him a tribute on Twitter, whatever. But I certainly, and I know you did as well, appreciated Justin's time. And his teammates did too. Not just him going toe-to-toe with Vic Fangio, but just his play on the field, his behavior in the locker room, the weight room, meeting rooms, everywhere.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned Vic Fangio because I caught up with PJ Locke, who's still very close with Justin Simmons this week, and sort of asked him what he learned from Justin. There was a lot that he had to say. And it turned out like helping PJ learn the complex Vic Fangio scheme, that was really just the beginning. This is a long response, but I think it's worth listening to everything PJ had to say about his about his former teammates. So this is PJ Locke reflecting on what he learned over the years from his good friend Justin Simmons.
Man, I don't know where to start. It's a bunch of things, man. It's a lot that I learned. We talk about IQ of the game. I feel like that was one of the toughest things for me coming into the league, is just trying to like process Vic Fangio's defense, because I mean he makes the safety command everything. You know, we talking to linebackers, we talking to the outside linebackers. He just put a lot of stress on the safeties, and obviously just understanding coverages, understanding what the offense is trying to do to attack those coverages. And I think that was like one of the main things. And like I felt like last year, the beginning of last year, like OTAs, how like it just started to click for me. And that's credit to him. That's credit to K-Jack. You know, as far as like off the field, man, it's just how genuine he is, man. Just like a guy of that caliber and that's just so down to earth. You know.
That's rare.
It's super rare. It's super rare. Just down to earth. Talk to everybody. He's a big talker. I'm not a big talker. He's a big talker. And how he just bridges the gap between the young and the old. Man, it's so much. And then from a spiritual aspect, he's a man of God. Also, I am too, and I had questions at one point, and I still do. And like and we kind of feed off each other. That type of thing. Introducing me to just the Bible studies. It's like a little PAO thing that we do in February. It's called Pro Athletes Outreach. That's what it's called. Yeah, it's just like a little. You have a bunch of speakers and stuff like that. But him introduced me to that. That's the spiritual side. Man, it's a lot. I can go on and on, honestly.
Wow,
there's a lot there. I mean,
yeah.
He hits on, matters of spirituality, being a good teammate, like, going up to everybody. And that's one of the traits of great locker room leaders is the ability to relate to everybody in that room, to, not exclude, to bring everybody in. It's something that we've seen quite positively from a lot of players over the years, still do. I mean, when you see players say, "Hey, come lift with us, man," like that's an example of good leadership.
Yep,
bringing everyone into the fold. And then, for PJ, he's become a really smart safety, a really high IQ player, and a lot of that comes from being around Justin, helping him learn the scheme. And then, kind of teaching him, good study habits to where now, here's PJ paying it forward and helping the younger players along in much the same way that Justin helped him along. So even though Justin's not a part of the Broncos beyond the text chat that he has with his fellow DBs, the example that he set continues to have an impact in the locker room, even after he's gone. And one of the things that as PJ and I continued talking, he said, I can't replace Justin. I can succeed him, but I can't replace him. That you can't replace a guy like that. Yeah.
Well, his fingerprints are still there. They're around the building. How could he not be with the work that he did? And I love how he talked about bridging young to old. And then I love how Justin really grasped and appreciated the safety lineage of the Denver Broncos. I can't think of a team, because we all think of Ronnie Lott with the 49ers. It's been a little thin. Right. And then what? With the Denver Broncos, with Dennis Smith, Steve Atwater is where we're going to start, Mace, and we're not going to finish.
Dude, if you want to go back to the opening days of the franchise, started with Goose Gonsolin, who racked up interceptions back in the 60s. And then you get into the 70s, the Orange Crush, Steve Foley was a cornerback, and then he was also a safety. And you think of Dennis Smith back there and Steve Atwater, like you mentioned. And then it doesn't even have to be Ring of Famers. There are good players like Nick Ferguson was a real good safety. Kenoy Kennedy was a real good safety. You got 3 years out of Brian Dawkins here. You got 4 Pro Bowl seasons out of John Lynch here. And then you get to the no-fly zone years, and you got T.J. Ward and D-Stu, Darian Stewart, and then Justin Simmons. And, maybe we're seeing a little of that. I'm not going to sit here and say P.J. Locke and Brandon Jones are, like Ring of Fame bound or anything like that. But certainly those two have done their part to kind of continue that long legacy. And it's really, it's really cool to see. There probably no position in the Broncos locker room has as much pride in its history with this organization as the safeties do.
Yeah, rock solid. Kareem Jackson there with Justin, as PJ mentioned there, and now carrying on that tradition. Now on the field, you and I might be a little concerned or a little stitious or maybe a lot stitious when it comes to Justin Simmons being able to make a play against Bo Nix. Now, he doesn't know Bo, but I guarantee he's studied Bo. So this thing of like, okay, Simmons, he knows how to pick off Pat Mahomes. You don't want him to get Bo in a critical moment, especially against that offense. We're going to get into that a little bit. But Simmons' impact on the field for his new team, Mace, that's something, if I'm Bo Nix, I might be avoiding where Justin Simmons is at.
He's got a lot of range. That's the trick with Justin Simmons in avoiding him, is he can cover so much ground that it's hard to completely avoid him. The other thing is also, that study, Patrick Mahomes, he's got Patrick Mahomes' number. But of course, the other thing with Patrick Mahomes, for all the honors that he's racked up, he puts up some passes that you can go grab if you're a defender. And Justin, to his credit, always understood that. And that's why he frequently made plays on Mahomes, including, by the way, this year when he was playing for the Falcons and he got his first interception as a Falcon off of Patrick Mahomes. He hasn't had one since. One thing that we do know is that for Justin Simmons, the interceptions tend to come in bunches. And if you're the Broncos, you're hoping that another bunch doesn't start in this game. But would it surprise anybody if he picked off Bo Nix? No, because he's doing extra work. Make no mistake, Simmons, when he met media this week in Atlanta, was very magnanimous about the Broncos, talk about being a Bronco for life, how much he loved it here, how it's still his home, his family's home. But I remember hearing some similar things from John Lynch 20 years ago, and he went out there playing for the Broncos against the Bucs, who'd cut him the previous offseason, as though he was shot out of a cannon. And I'm expecting that same kind of energy from Justin on Sunday. Of course, that being said, if he's too aggressive, you can take advantage of that. And I do wonder if that's something the Broncos in their scouting and game planning are counting on a little bit, that maybe Justin is too amped up and trying to capitalize on that. It's going to be a fascinating chess match, Cecil.
He'll have some extra juice, that's for sure. The Broncos will be able to counter that. He also mentioned in his comments to the Falcons media, he's like, I love the fans. They might boo me this time. And I was like, yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so either. When Justin said that, I was like, not really.
If they do a special intro for him, like something on the scoreboard, right before kickoff or whatever, he's going to feel a lot of love.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, the funny thing is there may be some tactics behind that. Let's go back to 2013 when Peyton Manning went back to Indianapolis for the first time since the Colts let him go.
Oh, yeah.
And they played the tribute video and the music was flowing and it was a standing ovation, all the warm fuzzies and all that. And I remember Peyton Manning saying not long after that, it sort of threw him off a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So think about that for a moment. If you're the Broncos deciding what to do, how to honor Justin Simmons, know this, that it can be a very warm moment, but it maybe can also give you something that you can take advantage of a little bit.
Yes.
Hey, all's fair in love and war, right?
Yeah, it's a fascinating conversation because you can pull on his heartstrings. We'll see if the Broncos do that. Now, on the flip side of the Atlanta offense, okay, Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier. Let's start with those two. I talked to Vance Joseph yesterday. I asked him about the complications in planning for two different style of running backs. Robinson, their version of Christian McCaffrey or LaDainian Tomlinson. High praise. He's worth that. And then Algier, kind of their version of a power back and can run with a lot of power. And VJ said you have to have different tackling plans. A different tackling plan for Bijan means kind of gather around him and make sure to get him down because he can break off those angles. The tackling plan for Algier is get everybody the ball and get ready for a fight. So those two just starting off in a Shanahan system, Mace, we know can be very complicating.
Very complicating, and they're getting more productive as the season is going along as well on the ground. First 5 games, Cease, Atlanta had not even 100 yards 4 times. Now, they were productive on a per carry average. A couple of those games, they averaged north of 5 yards a carry, but weren't getting the same opportunities. Last 5 games, the Falcons have rushed for $198, $155, 129, 100 yards against the Cowboys, and then 181 yards last week against the Saints.
Woo!
Yeah. And against the Cowboys was the only time in that stretch that they didn't average at least 4.4 yards a carry.
Okay.
Very productive. And the other thing that has gone along with it is, as you do that, you're protecting Kirk Cousins a little bit more. You're giving him a little bit more breathing room. And what we've seen on Kirk Cousins the last 5 games, his accuracy has gone up. It was a tick down last week when he went 23 of 38. But the previous 3 games, as they were getting that running game going, Kirk Cousins' completion percentage, 69%, nice, 79%, 79%.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
That's tough. That's real tough. When you're working on that play action passing, and again, wide zone, we know well. And I believe it was McGlinchey that told us this week, Mace, that was like, wide zone isn't about going wide.
Yeah.
It's just about blocking and finding who's messing up. So that Broncos defense needs to be on point, because when we get to the receivers, it's Kyle Pitts. That's a problem. It's Drake London, probably less so. And Darnell Mooney, a little bit banged up. We do have the injury report today, so let me check on Mooney's status. But it's like you've got weapons after weapons, and Cousins can't move. So advantage Broncos and Nick Benito. But if you give Cousins 2.5 seconds, Mace, he can find those guys. And whether it's Bijan out of the backfield as a receiver, Pitts at the tight end position, although he's a supersized receiver, Mooney on the long stuff, and then Drake whenever they can find it, because it'll be most likely PS2 on Drake London. These are complicating issues for whether it's your run defense or your pass defense.
Well, and the thing is, everything looks the same off the snap. That's part of the problem. Yep. So the Broncos are going to want to get that pass rush going. But the problem is, and it's been something that's been common in the wide zone offense going all the way back to Mike Shanahan here in Denver. The advantage that you have is because everything looks the same immediately off the snap. You got to hesitate before you can attack. John Franklin Myers, who actually played, of course, for the Rams, so he practiced against this. He knows what Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, he knows what these offenses are trying to do. And, of course, Raheem Morris, Zach Robinson, both former Sean McVay assistants. John Franklin Myers talked about this is about what you've got to watch for as a defensive lineman and be mindful of when you see everything looking the same way off the snap.
I think with them, it's just the fact that, they do a good job making everything look the same. And the point of the wide zone is to get guys, turning and, getting guys out of the gaps. So, it's staying in your gap, making sure the cutback isn't there. And then, being physical, knocking guys back on the front side.
Now, the other thing, and Mike McGlinchey mentioned that, Vance Joseph did coach 4 years in the AFC West with the Cardinals. So he schemed against the 49ers with Kyle Shanahan. He schemed against the Rams with Sean McVay. So it's not like VJ is going into this by any means blind. But this is an interesting setup because even though Kirk Cousins is not mobile at this point in his football life, and maybe you're tempted to blitz him, but is that causing more problems? I mean, I'm actually curious to see if after we saw the way that Patrick Mahomes diced up the blitz last week, where it was those quick, it was that quick hot read to Travis Kelce. If I'm Zach Robinson, I'm looking at that. I can translate those concepts into the wide zone easily.
Yes.
Kyle Pitts has become much more effective the last several weeks. Like there's been a corner that's been turned for Kyle Pitts after a rough start to the season. I think there's some frustration about him as a blocker. Well, now it's just, okay, you've got this weapon, use him. Take advantage of him. I mean, the turning point was really that game down in Tampa Bay. Of course, there was that one touchdown that there was an intrepid local TV camera who caught an angle and said, yeah, it probably shouldn't have been a touchdown because the ball was coming out before the goal line.
He did the Deshaun Jackson thing where you drop the ball before you cross the goal line, but he's super huge, super fast, and super dangerous. So Mooney, London, Pitts, problems.
Yeah, and actually I said the Tampa Bay road game. Really it started that Tampa Bay home game, that Thursday night game when he had 7 catches for 88 yards. And since then, Kyle Pitts has been north of 50 yards each game. But if I'm Zach Robinson, I'm looking at the hot reads to Travis Kelce, and I just getting the ball to him short and saying, okay, if they're going to blitz me, I'm setting it up to where Kyle's taking 2 steps, turn, throw, and turn, gets the ball. Because then it becomes something that perhaps players who can't get Kyle Pitts down with a solo tackle where you need to swarm. The problem is it's tougher to swarm if you're blitzing because the numbers are then working against you on the back end. So I'm fascinated to see the chess match here because maybe if you're Vance Joseph, you don't blitz. And if there is an area the Falcons are weak, it is in terms of pass protection at the tackle spots. It's a very good run blocking group. It's not a great pass protection group. So in other words, you might be able to get home on Kirk Cousins without blitzing. But if you do have to blitz, I do wonder if Atlanta's counter that is going to be some of those concepts that worked for the Chiefs last week on the hot reads to Kelsey.
Yeah, I think they've definitely figured that out. Maybe try to do a little bit of what Baltimore did with Zay Flowers. They do have speed there from Darnell Mooney. Not Flowers' quickness, but maybe faster in a straight line. So you have to be mindful of that too. If you give Cousins a little bit of time, he can slice you. And if you're running the ball effectively, the Broncos' run defenses will be tested in a way they were tested against Derrick Henry. They were ready for that. They've got to be ready for this ground game because that means Cousins can build off of that. If they're running the ball well, Cousins can run play action. Broncos defense might have some trouble.
Yeah, exactly. Now, that being said, Kirk Cousins has put some balls up for grabs this year. He's been picked off 8 times. Now, 5 of them were in the first 5 games, only 3 of them in the last 5 games. So he's cut that a little bit, but at the same time, he will try to get it to some tight windows. That's just who he is. Like he will try to make a play, and there will be some opportunities for takeaways in this game for the Broncos, and that might be a key to this because Atlanta could march up and down the field on you. Like I think it's going to take 27 points for the Broncos to win this game.
In a 27-24 type of game.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or 27-26 where your defense is getting stout in the red zone. It's allowing yards, but it's not allowing them to finish. I mean, it's something that the Broncos did against the Chiefs last week. They let them have plenty of drives, but when it got time to the red zone, when it was time to buckle down, the Broncos did that. So you might be looking at a game that's 23-26 points for the Falcons, but more of their drives are ending in 3 rather than 7. And you'll take that because that'll keep you afloat.
Yeah, that'll keep you afloat. It'll keep you fighting for another day. It is Denver Sports Tonight. Cecil, Lammey, and Andrew Mason on a Friday night on 104.3 The Fan, and then on a Saturday on YouTube.
Yeah, if you're on YouTube, it's not Friday.
It's not Friday.
Yeah, like because and actually nowhere in the world will it be Friday because we're on the back end of the time zones, as it were. I mean, you might be watching this pregame and it's Sunday.
You never know.
Happy Sunday in that case. Or you're watching this after the game and you're watching us tell us how wrong we were about how we projected this thing to go.
Yes. What are these chuckleheads talking about? The Broncos winning. Like, we're going to plan on a Broncos win, but how do they do that? Well, Bo Nix has an opportunity to have the first 300-yard passing game of his career. Can he do it? Will he do it? Mason and I will tell you coming up next. All right, mics are still hot.
That felt quick.
Hi, YouTube. That's a good sign, though. That's a good sign.
Yeah. I'm looking up, like, oh my gosh, we're already at 25 minutes. Jeez. Okay.
Right. All right, let's give him 8 minutes on Bo. And 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to Denver Sports Tonight. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason talking about Bo Nix. Bo Nix against this Falcons defense. Now, the secondary with Justin Simmons, as we've said, Mace, going to be some complications. Courtland Sutton on A.J. Terrell, that's a hell of a matchup. That's going to be really fun to watch. I've said run deep crossers at this team, cross them up and pick the side where Justin's not. That's my plan for Bo Nix. But your thoughts on Nix in this contest, going up and against an Atlanta defense that you can move the ball on?
You can move the ball on them, but at the same time, you want to still kind of play within yourselves here. This is a game where you maybe don't have to be going to the back end of your playbook, going for the trickery in order to create some explosive plays. I mean, you think about like the Baltimore game where to get that touchdown, you had to go dive into your 2-point conversion bag of tricks to get it done. This is a game where you ought to be able to just play fairways and greens ball here and be able to have a lot of success. A big part of that, though, is going to be getting the support from the running game. You know, we heard Joe Lombardi on Thursday talk about the hot hand. So whose hands are going to be hottest? Will it be Audric Estime again, or will it be Javonte Williams or Joel McLaughlin? Long term, I think you probably want it to be Audric Estime to continue to build the confidence and allow him to take that next step beyond what he got out of being the bell cow back there on that last drive against Kansas City last Sunday. They should have been the game winner. The fact that he got 6 carries on that drive as the Broncos were trying to go slow to get a field goal, which, as Sean Payne says, you can do. You can't slow it for a touchdown, but you can slow it for a field goal. And then he was getting those tough yards after getting some dynamic yards earlier in the game. It's the right kind of it was the right thing you were looking for. More of that, please.
More of that, please, and more great pass protection for Bo Nix. The least amount of pressures in the NFL are the Denver Broncos. I think the number 60. The most pressures in the NFL, as we talked about in last segment, come from this Broncos defense and Zach Allen having a monster season. But Sean Payton talked about this good pass protection for Bo Nix. Let's hear from the coach and talk about how that helps out Bo so much.
I think I've said this before, show me good pass protection metrics, and I'm going to show you a quarterback that doesn't take sacks. In other words, listen, it's a credit to the O-line, but there's some quarterbacks that are tough to protect for. Hold the ball long. You know, I've just gone through it in my career, and others, you know, Breeze was a hard sack because the ball came out. And so it made everyone around him better. And so I think those metrics are offensive line and quarterback-driven metrics. And so remember when he came out and it was hard to find him taking sacks. And there was a lot talked about with his underneath throat. We removed all those in the study. We removed them all because these guys can only run the offense they're running. And so when we did the study with all of these guys, all the bubbles and those were removed. And then Tony comes downstairs and says, he doesn't take sacks and he doesn't fumble. Knock on wood, never fumbled once in Oregon. And so I think we've been by and large healthy in the offensive line, and I think together from a protection standpoint and the QB, I think you've seen an uptick there.
He can't help himself. Cease. QBs that hold the ball. I've just gone through it. And then the eureka moment finding out on Bo Nix, he doesn't take sacks and he doesn't fumble. I mean, he's not saying the name, but it's like he just wants to say that Russell Wilson drove me mad last year.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh my gosh, I heard that. I'm like, oh my gosh. Now, I mean, you don't want to play the comparison game, but oh my gosh, he cannot help himself on this.
Right, and it's true when it comes to pass protection because you elevate the game of those in front of you. Like Bo's doing it a little bit. Garrett Bolles is really good. Mike McGlinchey's really good. Ben Powers, Quinn Miners, Luke Wattenberg. These guys are all really good. Bo's upticking their game because he's making quicker decisions with the football and taking care of the football.
Yeah, of course, even last year with Russell Wilson, they were top 10 in pass block win rate. That's
number 8.
Obviously not pressures. They were number 8, 3rd in run block win rate, 8th in pass block win rate. And so that too went into the whole equation of, okay, these guys up front are winning their matchups better than almost anybody else in football. and we still have an unacceptable sack rate. Where's that coming from? Well, it comes from the guy who's now in Pittsburgh.
Number 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. And number 10 on the field is number 1 in your hearts, because with protection, we'll talk a little bit more on Estime in the next segment, but like, man alive, and Court on Terrell, who else is it, Mace? I still think Adam Troutman could do a little bit more because it's there with him. You know, is it more Franklin, more Mims, as we saw, Devon Vele? Like, where's the other options outside of Court to help out Bo?
Probably, I think Mims with that running back alignment that he had last week, I think that's an option. I think this is, Vele getting on rhythm. Josh Reynolds did practice this week, but it seems like they're going to play the longer game with him, and that's fine. Let Vele continue to play. Let little Jordan Humphrey continue to play. And yeah, it gives Adam Troutman some opportunities as well. But I just real quick, I want to go back to kind of Sean Payton and Bo Nix and everything, because I did ask Sean Payton about, okay, he took those couple of long sacks. Like, how do you kind of work with him? And it was very interesting. Like, he talked about how he didn't really want to change what Bo Nix does. Like, you don't want to overcoach him because he already has these good habits as far as avoiding sacks, because he gets the ball out quick, because he processes quick. And it's something that Sean admires because he was a quarterback way back in the day, strike team quarterback, Chicago Bears, 1987. And he did. Yeah, there he is. He didn't, when he was playing then, he didn't have the processor that Bo Nix had. But as a quarterback, he and the other quarterbacks that are in that building, they see it and admire it, even though they didn't have it themselves.
Right.
And that is actually something that's interesting. It's like there definitely is a respect for Bo Nix from the coaches, especially those that understand quarterbacking really well, because they're like, man, that was the trait I wish I had, that processor, that ability to get to gauge everything quickly and make quick decisions. I wish I'd had that. I didn't, but at least I have the ability to see it in him and identify him as the guy we want.
And then coach him up on what made Sean Payton at the time 3rd most passing yards in college football.
Yeah.
Eastern Illinois, he got it done, man.
Yep. And then I think his biggest play when he was on the field and during the 87 replacement games was when he took off and ran. If I'm not mistaken.
22-yard touchdown, right? We watched the play together, and we're like, look at that. Sean
throwing. Had some wheels, man.
He skid out there and scoot, man. Okay.
Like he could go. Like it's and actually at practice on Friday, the last practice of the week, he's running around like demonstrating stuff. It's one of those goal to go red zone route drills, and like he's running around the end zone. I'm like, man, he's still got some speed to him.
Yeah.
Still got some speed.
There you go. Keeps him young, right? Keeps him young. Yep. It is Denver Sports Tonight, also a special edition of Orange and Blue today. Hey, watch us on YouTube and subscribe, please. It'll help us out. We got one segment left, and let's get more into Bo in this offense. And Audric Estime, is it the lead back or is it the hot hand? We'll tell you more next. All right, that was 9 minutes, so let's give this one like 6.5, something like that.
Okay. All
right, one more. And I like the Payton clips. We'll use that on the Friday show. So you're watching this Saturday. You've already seen the Friday show. But let's use the Payton clips on our Friday show here in a little bit, because those are too good to leave out.
You are giving quite the peek behind the curtain of our production here.
We'll got to get it done when we can, right?
Yeah.
Get it done when we can. All right, here we go. 6.5 or so in 3, 2, 1. Denver Sports Tonight, Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason. You mentioned Audric Estime, Mason. Joe Lombardi essentially saying, hey, if he's going to produce, we'll keep feeding him the rock. But it's a hot hand approach. And I think it's kind of funny because you stop playing fantasy, but you're like, if you're a fantasy GM, you hate this, the hot hand approach. But it's true. Fantasy GMs don't like, who's getting the ball? We don't know.
Yeah, it's funny because I'll post the clip of Joe Lombardi talking about the hot hand on social media, and there are people like, oh, fantasy this, fantasy that. And respectfully, Cease, I know you're deep in the fantasy community.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't give a crap about fantasy.
Like, we give a crap about the Broncos.
Yeah, like, is this the best thing for the Broncos? Yes, it is. It is. Now, can Audric Estime work his way toward RB1 status that all you fantasy players out there would probably love to see, because then you would know what was coming? Absolutely. He's got to continue to be as quick to the hole as he was last week. And then you can't forget this. It's the fumbles. I mean, he's still at the point, Cease, where one fumble probably knocks him back down and keeps him from getting opportunities, because he did have the 2 fumbles earlier this season, and he did have a fumble in the preseason as well. Trust me, that fumble is part of the data set that's on their minds as they're sitting there at Broncos Park, powered by Common Spirit, figuring out, okay, how are we going to disperse this a little bit? We've seen Jaleel McLaughlin start the last 2 games, and basically, I mean, there's an opportunity for him as well, but he's very much still the change of pace back.
Sure.
And now Javonte Williams, his baseline is 3rd down Samaje Perine, the role that we saw last year. Now it's a question of, okay, these are kind of these roles where they fit early in the game, and how they do early, how hot they show they are, depends what they get, decides what they get later on in the game. Like Audric getting those carries late because of how well he did early.
Yeah, and Audric Estime talking to our buddy Chris Thomason, shout out Chris, about pass protection. Like, if he wants to get on the field more and have it not be a tell, almost in a reverse way of the way it was a tell with Jaleel McLaughlin a year ago, where it's like, oh, he's in, then he's getting the ball. When Estime's in, you think, hey, he's getting the ball and it's running. It's not passing. But if he fixes and improves his pass pro, now he can be more of a full-time back.
Right. Well, it was the whole thing Jaleel McLaughlin spent his offseason working on, right? It's the reason why he's gotten more touches, is that he proved he's not a devastating pass protector, but at least he can identify an attack and get himself in the right spot.
Yeah.
And that's led to more work for him this year. Javonte Williams, he can pass protect.
Oh, yeah, he's great at it.
I mean, he did it last week as well. I mean, unfortunately, it was the double A gap blitz, so he could only get one part of that. But he certainly did his job in picking and IDing and picking the man up when he had to.
Yeah, and he picked up the right man. It was just many men coming through for Bo Nix, and Atlanta doesn't rush the passer well. They have, 9 sacks as a team? Yeah. Nick Benito has almost as many sacks as the Falcons do as a team, Mace. So, you want to protect Bo. Obviously, he's your franchise, but if there was a team to kind of maybe debut Estime as a pass protector or get him some real game chops in, maybe it's this one.
Yeah, I mean, Cease, only once in the last 9 games have the Falcons had more than 1 sack in a game.
Wow. It's not great, Bob.
They are averaging less than a sack per game in their last 9 contests.
Okay.
Bo's going to have some time to operate. And the thing that happens, of course, if you struggle to rush the passer, this is where we got to change things up. We got to blitz. And maybe this is what the Falcons will do, is they're going to look at Bo Nix, rookie quarterback, and say, okay, we got to try to shake it up a little bit. Let's come after him with the blitz. Bo's getting better at responding to the blitz. Now, obviously, there's a level when it's like that double A gap, bring the house like we saw in Kansas City last week, that led to some big losses. And what he's going to have to do is mitigate the losses on that. Don't let those be 16, 17-yard sacks like they were in Kansas City. You got to, as Kenny Rogers saying, you got to know when to hold him, know when to fold him, know when to walk away, know when to run. Now, perhaps part of the solution there is when you see that coming, you run as fast as possible. You do get outside. And maybe there's a throwaway. It's easier said than done.
Sure.
But that's perhaps what you want to do when you identify that, to fight another play at 2nd and 10 rather than 2nd and 26.
Right. Don't run backwards and trying to make something happen. Just it's on to the next one. That's for sure. This one to me, Mace, comes down to what can you get more out of the ground game? Atlanta's not great defensively. The secondary's good. But if you can run the ball, you can win, and you can get to that 27, 28 points that we've talked about.
Yes, exactly. And then you can control the pace as well, because if you are running the ball, you are keeping that explosive Falcon offense off the field.
Yep.
We talked about needing long drives in Baltimore. Didn't get there. Might have gotten there if you'd had a fourth down conversion or two early, but you didn't get there.
Right.
But here's another game where you got to have some long drives. If you can have some 5-6 minute marches and keep Kirk Cousins, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson and company standing there on the east sideline fidgeting as the yards tick up for the Broncos, then you've got yourselves a good chance to win this game. And against a team that is built to cause you problems, especially from their offense and the weaponry they possess, and a team that historically has caused the Broncos problems over the last 20 years.
Yep, that's right. We'll see if the Broncos can get it done. He is Andrew Mason. You follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver, and I'm at Cecil Lammey. You hear that sweet Ronnie James deal? It means Alex is the man in the box today. Appreciate you, Alex. Appreciate you all for watching and for listening here on 104 Through the Fan. He's Mace. I'm Cease. Everyone, stay tuned and stay frosty.